All right. Step 7, task, update the appearance of the buttons and the text view. So your app layout is now basically complete, but its appearance can be improved with a few small changes. Step 1, add new color resources. In colors.xml, change the value of the screen background to hashtag 2196F3, which is a blue shade in the material design palette. Let's go ahead and just copy that. We'll go to our colors XML. That's over here in your values. Colors XML. Screen background. All that blue text, you're going to delete and then paste. Now, if we go to our fragment first, we'll see our background has been changed. Step 2, we're going to add a new color named button background. Use this value BBDEFB, which is a lighter shade in the blue palette. So copy that color. Actually, we'll go ahead, just for purposes of being speedy, we'll copy it, but you should try and type these out as much as possible. So right in the color panel, right under screen background, go to the end here, press enter to go down one shift, and then paste it. And then now you should see button background there. Perfect. Step 2, we're going to add a background color for the buttons. In the layout, add a background color to each of the buttons. You can either edit the XML in the fragment first XML or use the attributes panel, whichever you prefer. This basically goes ahead to further iterate the fact that you can do these two different ways to do one thing. Let's go back to fragment first. And we're changing the background color of the background. We'll take this right here and copy it. And what we're going to do is get to our XML here. And we'll post this inside of our button, I believe. Each of the buttons. Yep. So that's the first button. As you see, I pasted it right under Android ID. You can paste it anywhere you'd like. Go to the end here, press enter, paste. And our third final button here, enter, paste. And now we've added a background color to all our buttons. If we go back to our design panel, you'll see they're now this light baby bluish color or lighter sky blue color. Step 3, we're going to change the margins of the left and right buttons. Number 1, give the toast button on the left start margin of 24 dp and give the random button at the right end margin of 24 dp. Using the start and end instead of left and right makes these margins work for all language directions. That's just a parentheses. So we'll go to our toast button here. And remember, we have a constraint widget here. And it wants us to take this left margin and type 24. Press enter. Now you see it's not directly connected to the side of the screen. Makes it more noticeable as a button. Look at our random button here. It's pressed right against the side of the screen. If you notice that when you work with your own apps in your phone, you want to make sure your button is very clear and very understandable. This right here tells me it's a button. This right here, not having that side or space, can make someone not understand that that is a functional button. So these have to be edited. We're going to do the same thing for that left or right constraint. So the right margin will be 24. And now you see we have clear, distinctive space and constraints within our buttons. Step 4. Update the appearance of the text view. Remove the background color of the text view, either by clearing the value in the attributes panel or by removing the Android background attribute in the XML code. When you remove the background, the view background becomes transparent. So what that means is your text view won't have that background purple anymore. I'm going to my text view. If you look at the Android background here, equals color primary dark, you're going to highlight that and just delete it. Now it's gone. And you see now we have just our text view with the white colored fonted 0. And that's what it means to be transparent, is it's the same background as what's behind it. Moving on. Increase the text size of the text view to 72 SP. And we're going to do that in the XML code. So Android text size equals 72 SP. You can also do it here in the text size. So there you go. Now, if we go to the text view, Android text size, it's been automatically changed to 72 SP for us. So either way, you can change it here or you can change it in the design panel like I did in the attributes panel. And there it is. Step 3, we're going to change the font family of the text view to sans serif if it's not already. I believe mine isn't. So we'll go back to our text view. Font family is casual. We're going to go sans serif. Just like that. Once again, you can also change that within your text view as well. Here's your font family. It all depends on which one you prefer. Four, we're going to add a app layout constraint vertical bias property to the text view. To bias the position of the view upwards a little so that it is more evenly spaced vertically in the screen. Feel free to adjust the value of this constraint as you like. Check in the design view to see how the layout works. So right here, we're going to take this and copy it. And we'll go to our text view and paste it in. I'm going to paste it at the end. So right at the end of the last one there, make sure you're within this closing greater symbol and paste it. And now this constraint vertical bias is within my text view. And if you see, it's now moved up towards this a little more. It was about here, I would say, before, in the middle, and now you see it's now raised up. It says here you can also set the vertical bias using the constraint widget. Click and drag the number 50 that appears on the left side and slide it upwards until it says 30. So this little panel right here, as you see, it's numbered 30 for me already. And you can do it just like that without having to do the code. Once again, 2 ways to do one thing. Here's a tip for us. Using the bias attribute instead of margins or padding results in a more pleasing layout on different screen sizes and orientations. If a view is constrained to other views on both its top and bottom edges, use vertical bias to tweak its vertical position. If a view is constrained on both left and right edges, use the horizontal bias to tweak its horizontal position. What it's basically trying to explain to you is that you want your app to look the same on every different device, every different phone, every different screen size. What this does is further along the uniformity of your app, so that instead of just adding margins and getting more space than we need to, this will help make sure that it's positioned and it looks exactly the way that it was intended to look by us designing it. Moving on to step 6, make sure the layout width is wrap content and the horizontal bias is 50. Here's our app layout constraint horizontal. I'm going to copy that. Copied. And this is still within our text view. It wanted us to make sure our width was wrap content, I believe. Yeah, layout width is wrap content, which it is. Layout width, wrap content. Now I'm going back to my text view coding. Now right under this app layout constrained vertical bias, which I added, I'm going to do what I did. Paste it. And now I have an app layout constraint horizontal underscore bias. And it should automatically adjust for this text view. Now it has my constraints set perfectly. And if you notice here in the layout, the horizontal bias is 50. So you want your horizontal, no matter what screen, no matter what device they're using, it'll be directly in the middle, 50-50 for the width. These can be adjusted here, or you can copy the code like I did. Step 5, we're going to run our app. Gradle has 0 errors. Gradle is what builds your app. And there you go. Now our app's starting to look exactly like we have it coded. Moving on to the next task. Make your app interactive. You have added buttons to your app's main screen, but currently the buttons do nothing. In this task, you will make your buttons respond when a user presses them. First, you will make the toast button show a pop-up message called a toast. Next, you will make the count button update the number that is displayed in the text view. What you'll learn in this section here: how to find a view by its ID, how to add a click listener for a view, how to set and get property values of a view from your code. Okay, step 1, enable auto imports. To make your life easier, you can enable auto imports so that Android Studio automatically imports any classes that are needed by the Java code. This will definitely make your life easier. In Android Studio, open the settings editor by going to File, Other Settings, Preferences for New Projects. So let's do that. File, Other Settings, Preferences for New Projects. File is right up top here. File, Other Settings. Settings for New Projects. Here we are. All right, number 1, in Android Studio, open the settings. That's what we did. Select Auto Imports. In the Java section, make sure Add Unambiguous Imports on the fly is checked. There you go. Go to Other Settings here. It should be a drop-down. Auto Import. This box right here, Add Unambiguous Imports on the fly. Make sure that's checked. And we're going to click Apply. What this does basically is whenever you're importing something and you don't have it set, it's going to give you an error and it's not going to work. I don't know how to explain this to people who don't no code, but um, for the computer scientists, imagine like when you create your scanner and you import your scanner. Without that import, you can't use scanner, correct? So that's what this is doing. So it's letting you add imports on the fly. That's the same thing as when we type import java.util scanner. We're importing on the fly. So this allows that to happen. Step 2 is going to be to show a toast. In this step, you will attach a Java method to the toast button to show a toast when the user presses the button. A toast is a short message that appears briefly at the bottom of the screen. As you see here is like a hello toast. Step 1, we're going to open first fragment.java. So app java com example Android my first app, first fragment. So here we are going to code, guys. Here is right here Android app Java. Let me close the res folder. So you see Android app Java. And this com example, my first app, it should open your classes here. And you see first fragment. Click on the class, double click it. And now we have our two methods here on create view and on view created. On create view, here's where code can go. And method on view created. This class has only two methods on create view, on view created. These methods execute when the fragment starts. As mentioned earlier, the ID for a view helps you identify that view distinctly from other views. Using the find view by ID method, your code can find the random button using its ID, r.id.random button. So find view by ID, you see your r.id.random button that's set on click listener. Take a look at on view created. It sets up a click listener for the random button, which was originally created as the next button. So this was created for us already. This used to be called the next button. That was the one that was created for us on view created. Don't worry about what a lot of this says if you don't understand it and you're not a coder. But even if you do code, it's just like anything, importing things that we need, taking input, calling methods. So this right here does the following. Use the find view by ID method with the ID of the desired view as an argument. Then set a click listener on that view. In the body of the click listener, create an action, which in this case is for navigating to another fragment. Tell the navigator control to set the action for the first fragment to the action that was just created. And 3, just below the click listener, add code to set up a click listener for the toast button, which creates and displays a toast. Here's the code right here. Just copy this whole thing. Okay. And you're going to post the whole thing right under your random button. So if you see, this was already created for us by Android Studio when it was called the next button and we changed it to random button. At the end of that semicolon, you would press enter, paste, and then you've created another on click listener for a button, for your toast button, to then create a toast. So it should look like this. And then when you run it, as you see, my toast now says hello toast and it pops up. Is everyone good there?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Moving on. If you want, extract the message string into a resource as you did for the button labels. You have learned that to make a view interactive, you need to set up a click listener for the view which says what to do when the view button is clicked on. The click listener can either implement a small amount of code directly, call a method that defines the desired click behavior in the activity. Step 3. Make the count button update the number on the screen. The method that shows the toast is very simple. Does not interact with any other views in the layout in the next step. It does not interact with any other views in the layout. In the next step, you add behavior to your layout to find and update other views. We're going to update the count button so that when it is pressed, the number on the screen increases by 1. In the fragment first.xml layout file, notice the ID for the text view. It's Textview Android ID at Textview first. That is fragment first, Textview first. In first fragment Java, add a click listener for the count button below the other click listeners in the onView created. Because it has a little more work to do, have it call a new method count me. So we're going to do like what we did. We're going to copy all of this. And paste it over here in the Java file, first fragment. And if you see the count me is in red because we haven't created that method yet. In the first fragment class, add the method count me. That takes a single view argument. This method will be invoked when the count button is clicked and the click listener is called. So copy this here. We're going to go to first fragment class. If I could put it in here. Okay. You're going to post your method within, right under the onClick view, count me view. Now we have our method here, private void count me view. Step 4, get the value of the show count text view. You will define that in the next step. This is going to be within the method. Same thing, copy it, paste it. This is red because we haven't created it yet. It says you will define in the next step. Convert the value to a number and increment it. Copy this. And then we'll copy this last one. Right below. Okay, so we're going to copy that text view, show count text view, so it gets rid of that red error message.
One second. Antonio. How?
So right now, what you should have, you should have pasted your find view by ID, the count button set on click listener. You should have pasted your on click um, method count me here. Then outside of that, you should have pasted your um, this method here, the count me one. So you should have a method for on click and count me. And then you want to take at the very top of your public class first fragment, extends fragment here, right above the first at override. You're going to paste your text view, show count text view.
So basically, we are creating an object of text view, right?
Yeah,
So yeah, for that we are setting whatever we are taking the count. So we are using set text method. That's it.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so that was step 4. Cache the text view for repeated use. This step says you could use find view by ID and count me to find show count text view. However, count me is called every time the button is clicked, and find view by ID is a relatively time consuming method to call. So it is better to find the view once and cache it. In the first fragment class before any methods, add a member variable for show count text view of type text view. That's what we did. In onCreateView, you will call the find view by ID to get the text view that shows the count. The find view by ID method must be called on a view where the search for the requested ID should start. So assign the layout view that is currently returned to a new variable, fragment first layout, instead. Okay, so in onCreateView, that's right here. On create view, we're going to paste inside of this thing on create view. Instead of doing it piece by piece like this, I'm just going to scroll down here. And this is going to be this method right here. As you can see, I'm going to copy this whole thing all the way up to the at override, but when I paste it, I want to make sure that I cover everything that I'm posting. There you go. Now we have this on create view in the way that we need it. And then now if we run our app and press the count button, it should update. So what this is doing is just it's creating a for the text view for so it can be repeatedly used, and it doesn't have to call or continuously trying to do the same thing for the same action that we want from it. So let's go ahead and run it. Okay, our count now is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And look, our toast is still working as well. All right. All right, now we're going to go to step 9.